I'm already looking into the 2022-2023 season and looking ahead at schedules, and I have a list right here on my notebook on what are the top games you should be looking out for if you're a fan of college football and your team isn't playing that great, or you just want to know what the best games are. I got you, man. I got about 10 games here, 5 honorable mentions because I didn't want to really rank all 10 games. I have a top 5 completely in order. But with that being said, let's get right into it with my first honorable mention. We have USC versus UCLA. I think this one's pretty obvious. It's a rivalry game. It's Lincoln Riley versus Chip Kelly, a matchup that I would really much want to go see in person if I could. It'll be Zach Charbonnet versus Caleb Williams, and I'm saying this because I know Caleb Williams is going to USC. If he goes to LSU, that'll be a whole video in and of itself, but I truly do believe Caleb Williams is going to end up at USC anyways. This game is obviously interesting for pretty obvious reason. With that being said, let's move on to A&M versus Alabama, another obvious game that's going to be really interesting. I'm not talking about these non-conference games just yet. A&M is going to have to come out and show out with them going on the road against Alabama, a motivated Alabama team that's going to be probably the most motivated since probably 2016, as they are bringing back a ton of defensive talent. Nick Saban always wants to beat a team that beats him in the previous year. I mean, we saw what they did to A&M in 2013, so on and so forth. But A&M is also bringing the greatest recruiting class of all time. They're going to want to prove that they're one of the blue bloods of college football and a top 5 team. And this year is a playoff or bust year for Texas A&M in many people's eyes. I don't really see it that way. I say they're a year away. In a lot of people's eyes, with the recruiting class they're bringing in, they're kind of seen as playoff or bust. And this is a game that you have to win if you want to be in the playoffs. We saw that it doesn't take one Alabama loss to get into the playoff. You have to have a lot of things go your way, including beating teams handily, including an LSU and Arkansas and a Miami who is also on this list. With that being said, we'll go to TCU versus SMU. TCU versus SMU I think is one of the most interesting in my opinion, as Sonny Dykes' former team in SMU plays Sonny Dykes' current team in TCU. TCU has lost a ton of transfers and recruits as of recent. SMU has lost a ton of transfers and recruits as well because of Sonny Dykes, and there's been also some transfers between both programs. It'll be interesting to see how those players show out against their former team. I think SMU had a lot of momentum coming into this year and lost it because Sonny Dykes is probably one of the most up-and-coming coaches in all of college football. TCU, it'll be interesting to see how good they are. It's kind of a boom or bust every year when it comes to TCU. You don't really know what to expect when it comes to them. Cincinnati versus Arkansas, it'll be interesting to see how Luke Fickell plays without Desmond Ridder, without Ahmad Gardner, without Kobe Bryant, without a lot of their talent that they had in previous years. This will be kind of a litmus test against a lower SEC opponent, not at Georgia, not at Alabama. And I think Cincinnati could be an upset alert kind of team against Arkansas, but I think Arkansas this year is going to be super dominant. They're going to be one of the most physical teams in the SEC. They got plenty of weapons now this year. They're losing Treylon Burks in the draft, but they replaced it with 5-star Jadon Hazelwood. Not to mention their linebacking core added 5-star Drew Sanders from Alabama. I think Arkansas could be a surprise team, but they could also very easily be a letdown as there's a lot of hype building. I put them in my top 10. I think revisionist history, I think I put them a little too high. But with that being said, I think that game is going to be really interesting, and to see if Luke Fickell is the real deal and how much can he improve as a head coach, because there's always so much a head coach can do. With that being said, we got Notre Dame and USC. I almost put this one in my top 5. It's just because Caleb Williams isn't confirmed to come to USC, but I do think he will. And I think this game will be an interesting test for Marcus Freeman to see how well he could go against a high-powered offense in USC. Obviously, it's also a rivalry game. Notre Dame has one of the toughest schedules in all of college football. I'll throw in my honorable mentions, also Notre Dame versus Clemson, but I didn't want to just keep saying Notre Dame because Notre Dame is in my top 5 for an obvious game. With that being said, I got at number 5, Utah versus Florida. They've only met once in 1977 and Florida won. It'll be interesting to see how good will Billy Napier be in year 1? I think he needs an entire recruiting class to come in. Emory Jones is still on the roster, so you have AR-15. Plenty of other players that are super talented as Florida. I think he needs to get his own guys in there, and he did with a couple of this recruiting class, but they're freshmen. There's only so much they can do, and Utah is one of the most dangerous teams in college football, but I think Utah should be watch out for upset alert because Utah is getting a little overrated right now. And I think Florida could pull this upset off in a really, really good game. Next up, I have Alabama at Texas. Alabama and Texas have so many ties together from the BCS championship, from coaching, from players. Jahleel Billingsley was a former Crimson Tide, now at Alabama. Now we have Quinn Ewers, Xavier Worthy. This is going to have stars all over. This is going to be an NFL versus NFL kind of level matchup, but I do have Alabama winning this. I don't think it's going to be super close. I think Alabama is super motivated to beat Texas, especially with Texas coming into the SEC and making a statement. This is something that Nick Saban would do, and I feel like being Texas is Texas. They're going to say something right before the game that's going to motivate this team and be bulletin board worthy. And I would not be surprised if Alabama's goal next year is to own Texas, like how A&M owned Alabama, the state of Alabama, I would say, as they beat Auburn, they beat Alabama. I wouldn't be surprised if the Crimson Tide wants to own Texas, as they are going to try to beat Texas and Texas A&M in the same year. That being said, we go to number 3 with Texas A&M versus Miami. I think this game is going to be a lot closer. It's going to be at Texas A&M. Miami is going to have Cristobal and crew, and they've been going head-to-head when it comes to recruiting because A&M has been dominating in Florida as of recent, and Mario Cristobal is going to want to make a statement game against A&M, a team that will most likely be ranked in the top 5 going into this game, as this is a week 2 matchup. This is going to be one of the best games in college football. I wouldn't be surprised if game day went to this game. I love this matchup. The more and more it gets closer to us, I think this matchup could be in the top 2 range of how interesting this game could be. At number 2, I have Notre Dame versus Ohio State in week 1. This could be a great game for Marcus Freeman to show if he's developed his team from that collapse against Oklahoma State. And Ohio State can't come out flat like they did against Minnesota. Their offense is going to be tested against a really good defense, as they've gotten plenty of transfers for Notre Dame and a really good recruiting class is coming in. This is going to be a much more mature Notre Dame team, and this team, if they go 2 of 3 against Clemson, Ohio State, and USC, this team could easily sneak into the playoffs. Be on the lookout for Notre Dame. I'm very high on them. I think I would probably put them at 4 right now, ahead of Clemson, and then A&M at 6. With that being said, the number 1 game, in my opinion, and it's far and above everyone else, it's Oregon versus Georgia, week 1. This is the game that College Game Day needs to be going to. This is one of the best games in recent memory. You have Dan Lanning, former Georgia defensive coordinator, going to Oregon, being the head coach, and he has lost a ton of recruits through the Cristobal hire, and he knows everything about Georgia. He's been at Georgia for a long time. He knows everything how to beat that defense because he's created that defense. He's trying to build a culture in Oregon. Will last for a very long time until maybe Kirby Smart leaves for Georgia and Dan Lanning goes there. I don't see Dan Lanning upgrading from that head coaching position for a long time. And I think he's going to be a great head coach for Oregon. It's Oregon's offense that concerns me. Georgia's bringing a ton back, but they're also losing a ton. So this is the time that you could potentially beat the national champions week 1, but I would still pick Georgia to win that game, as they're bringing Stetson Bennett back, and a ton of talent is coming into the next recruiting class. Georgia is just going to be one of those teams that reload every year, but Oregon is going to be a great test for them week 1. Who isn't excited for 2022-2023 season? I mean, this is just a small slate of games and a long list of a great season coming up, as these hires and the specific moves that have been made through transfers have made this game almost a top tier game season to watch. I'm so excited to watch this season. Let me know who your favorite team is playing and which game you're going to be trying to go to, and which game are you the most excited for on this list. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.